So you're thinking about making a move to Naples, Florida? Do you hear that? It's the market crashing. Is it though? Today we're going to be talking about all of the things that you're seeing in the news and on YouTube. The housing market is crashing. All of those things that we're seeing, we're going to talk about all of it. There's going to be a lot of statistics happening in this video, so try to stay along with me. If you have questions at the end of this, all of my contact information is listed in the video description below. So let's start by asking the question, are we in a recession? The answer to that is yes. Let's look up the definition of recession. A recession is a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall in GDP and 2 successive quarters. So does a recession mean that the housing market is going to crash? The answer is no. Look, I used to be one of those people that would come up with these ideas and my perspectives and say, this is what's going to happen. But what I learned is that nobody knows. What we do know is the data that we have right now, the data that we as professionals are watching, and is it stabilizing? Yes, it is. I can tell you that the past 2 weeks, we have seen more active listings coming on the market than sold listings. Are housing prices just falling off like a lot of these other people are saying? No, they're not, and we're gonna take a look at that. I'm gonna share slides with you and we're gonna go through lots of information. Stay with me. The most important thing that I can tell you is that every single market, the stock market and the housing market, all have cycles. Typically a housing market is 7 to 10 years. Now, we were kind of on the downslope, and when COVID happened, especially here in Florida, that made prices surge. So is that housing market a little bit longer right now? Yes, it is. Are we kind of at the peak of that? Yes, we are. Will things slow down? Of course it can, but that is done by design. That was done by the Fed. If you don't know what that is, that's the Federal Reserve that regulates and imposes interest rates. Now, if you've been watching the news over the last, 2 to 3 years, you probably saw interest rates are at 2%, interest rates are at 2.75, 3%, and now you're seeing, or if you're in the housing market, you're feeling interest rates are 5.5%. Now, it is worth knowing that the Federal Reserve can make the smallest change in interest, so they can make a change of 0.25% and it has the greatest effect on the market. This is all being done by design. And here's why. Our prices were skyrocketing. In Florida, we had so many people moving from other states to Florida for political reasons, for personal reasons, for weather, which they normally do anyway. People moving in, and so we did have a bit of a supply issue. In addition to that, we of course had all of the supply chain issues that everywhere had in the country. So yes, we did have a bit of a supply issue in addition to a demand issue with so many people moving into the state of Florida. Now, home prices are leveling out, and we're gonna get into why. First though, we're gonna take a look at home appreciation since World War II. You can see the increase from 1945 to 2021. It's not back down to where it was back in 1945. It isn't not even during the crash. You see that big dip there after 2006. Did it even go down that low? Let's take a look at the forbearance numbers. If you don't know what a forbearance is, this is when a borrower or a homeowner goes to their lender and says, hey, I can't pay my mortgage. What kind of a program, what do you have for me? This is what a lot of people were doing after COVID when they stopped paying their mortgage. So what happened is that the mortgage companies were working with the borrowers and they were either tacking those payments onto the end of the life of their loan or working out some other kind of payment arrangement with them. The people that don't fulfill those obligations, they go into foreclosure or they have to short sale. So this slide right here, this data is showing you the monthly number of loans who are still in active forbearance in the millions. So you can see May 2020, we were way high. I mean, 4.76%. So that means that the people that were struggling to pay their mortgage and in that forbearance program are really no longer in it. But what we're going to do now is dive into that 0.69 number, and we're going to take a closer look at where these people are that are in the forbearance program. So we can see that the loans upon exiting the forbearance program, 1.3% went into short sales. That's basically the type of sale that you have before you go into foreclosure. 37% were paid in full, 44.6% were workouts or repayment plans, 18.4% were still in trouble. So again, that is 18.4 out of this 0.69 number that we were looking at before. Danielle Hale, who's the chief economist at Realtor.com, had something to say about this. She said, "We have learned from history that prices can fall. The more important question is if it's going to happen right now, and that's hard to say." So again, people that are saying the housing market is crashing, you have a chief economist saying that's really hard to say. It's really hard for somebody to stand there and say, yes, this is what's happening right now. All we can do is present the information as we get it, real hard data, and that's what we're doing. So, are there market cycles? Yes, there are. This is just the way the housing market works. The market goes up and it tapers back down. This is the natural cycle, and this is what we see happen since the beginning of time, really. At what point in time have you ever seen a housing market spike and just continue to go up until the end of time? We all know that it hasn't. Look back at the last 10 or 20 years. There is a cycle and there is a flow of things. Do we have housing market crashes? Absolutely. We had one in 2006. Does that mean that is what's happening right now? Not necessarily. So let's continue to take a look. Now we're going to look at some lending standards, and I show this because what we faced in 2006, 2008, 2012 was by and large because of the standards that were in place at that time. So let's look at this slide. So product risk is in red and borrower risk is orange. So back in 1999, going into 2006, 2007, we can see that product risk was really high, and then we crashed. There we are in 2008, still a little bit high, but definitely not as high as 2006. And as we trail off 2014, 15 into 21, we can see that the borrower risk now prevails. So again, going back to that foreclosure activity, it is at an all-time low. We can see that that has really tapered off. So if we look at 2008, 9, 10, we can see those foreclosure numbers were really high, over 1 million. I mean, we were almost at 3 million at one point in time. And now if we go back to Q1 2022, 78,000. So why is that? Those lending standards have tightened up. So if we look at this slide here, we're looking at the volume in loans in the billions with borrowers with a credit score of under 620. So look at those numbers. Back in 2004, 2005, those were skyrocketed. And now we look to 2021 and we can see again that has tapered off. Lenders are providing loans to those people that are truly qualified. There are much tighter standards. There are no stated loans like there were before. The borrower really has to go through a very tight mortgage application and underwriting process. Today, mortgage debt is not a challenge. Household debt service ratio for mortgages as a percentage of disposable personal income. This is the total quarterly required mortgage payments divided by the total quarterly disposable personal income. And you can see that today, that's 3.8%. Back in January 1980, that was 4.4. You can see October 2007, it was really high, which was making people go into foreclosure because they did not have the income to pay their mortgage. Today, they do. And I can tell you that here in Southwest Florida, we can track how many of our contracts sell with a cash offer or sell with a mortgage. And back in, I believe it was March, we were at 70% cash transactions. Now, how do those cash transactions go into foreclosure? If they paid with cash, I don't know. Let's talk about cash out refinances. Again, if we look at 2005, 2006, 2007, you can see the difference in annual mortgage payments for cash out refinances. Now look over to 2021. we're at $34. That is a big difference from where we were before the actual housing market crash in 2006. So what's ahead? We're going to look at home pricing forecast for 2022. This forecast was taken by 7 different entities, and we're going to look at each of them. Fannie Mae says that home prices will increase 10.8%, Freddie Mac says 10.4%, CoreLogic 9.6%, HPES is 9%, NAR is 8.4%, Zelman 8.3%, and MBA is 6.2%. The average of all 7 forecasts is 9%. So the housing price forecast for 2022 does still say, according to these 7 experts, that housing prices will continue to go up for 2022. Now let's take a look at the estimated home price performance. So yes, 2022, we did take that average of 9%. Going to 2023, we will see that number. We do think that number will taper off slowly but surely, like the regular housing cycle does. And here's why. Right now, we have so many buyers that have been trying to get into this market specifically for about 2 years now. Some of them said, you know what, I'm waiting till home prices cool off. I'm gonna get out of the market. This is too much for me. I'm exhausted. If you think about a traffic jam, we have all of these buyers kind of backed up, clogging up the system, and they're just kind of holding off. Now the traffic is starting to go again. Again, this was all done by design as we rise interest rates. Normally, when there's any change in interest rates, people kind of move to the side, but we are still in a high demand place right now, so we still do have buyers, and they're just kind of moving along now. So things are moving, they're just moving a little bit slower than they were before. If we look at the cumulative house appreciation by 2026, you can see that it starts off high and then kind of tapers down, just like you would see in a normal housing cycle. The housing market cycle goes up and it goes down. That is 100% normal. If we look at the cumulative house appreciation by 2026, you can see that 46.5% are optimists and just over 10% are pessimists. So remember before when we were talking about the Fed and they can make the smallest change and have the greatest effect on the market? This is from Bill Mcbride, who's the author of Calculated Risk. So based on the current estimate for the peak Fed funds rate, 3.25 to 4.0, the 30-year fixed mortgage will likely peak between 5 and 5.7%. There is some variability in the relationship, so we might see rates as high as the low 6 range. Of course, he says, this all depends on inflation and the Fed funds rate, but I don't expect rates to move much higher than the current rate, although 6% is possible. Now, I will also tell you that we do have some lenders that say it could go up into 7% or even 8%. And if we take that and compare it with what the rates were in the 80s, where we were seeing 11, 16%, it still really is not bad. We have just been accustomed to these hyper low rates like 3% and 2.5%. If we get into affordability, we can see that the Harris poll says that about 84% of Americans plan to cut back their spending because of price spikes. This is not just housing, this is gas, this is oil, this is groceries, this is baby formula, this is all of these things that we're seeing in the news every day. So yes, Americans are planning on cutting back. It's not just housing, it's all of these other things. Okay, so now we're going to talk about those payments. Of course, we talked about when the Fed makes the smallest change, it has the greatest impact. Now we know that the Fed has made pretty big spikes in those interest rates, so of course it's going to have an even greater impact, which is why we're seeing prices level off. However, we do still need to talk about what the monthly mortgage payment is. This slide here is going to be talking about the principal and interest only. Of course, when we're normally calculating mortgage payments, we call this PITI, or principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And of course, taxes and insurance is going to vary by county, state, what have you. So let's take a look at this slide. If we look at January 2021, we were seeing the average mortgage rate was about 2.73%. Now, this is all based on a $300,000 loan. So the monthly payment back in January 2021 was just over $1,200. Let's go down the line. We see April, July, October, we can see those rates increasing, and of course the monthly payment increases as well. Now, we are currently at 5.27%. That same $300,000 loan is now $1,660.33. That's a pretty big jump from January 2021. If we end up going to 5.5% or higher, you can expect to pay at least $1,700 on your mortgage. Now, there's some creative ways to make your interest rate a little bit lower, and we can talk about that if you're looking at purchasing in the Southwest Florida market by the seller paying points for you. This next slide is from the research economists at NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, and it's talking about inflation and how much lower buyers are looking to purchase property for. So let's take a look at this one. The average consumer is spending an additional $429 monthly for items other than shelter. Meanwhile, average weekly wages rose just $212 per month, so the consumer is short by $217 per month. This means that the average consumer is going to be looking for a home that's about $42,000 cheaper than they were before. So ask yourself, do you have a relevant market opinion based on facts? That's the question. Are we in a housing market crash? No, we're not. But we will take a look at the hyperlocal data here in Southwest Florida, and we will show you what is happening. What you will see is that we do have more active homes coming on the market than sold homes, and you will see that we also have a lot of price decreases. Why do we have price decreases? Because sellers were pushing the market and they're realizing you can't do that anymore. You can't just say, I want X for my house just because there's no other homes on the market. Now we have interest rates that have risen, and we have buyers that have just said, you know what? I'm done with this until prices come down. So they will come down. This is great news for buyers. This means that you can now get into the market. You will see prices go down, interest rates will go up, but remember, you can always write that off on your taxes. All right, if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living, working, breathing, sleeping in Southwest Florida, including Naples, Bonita Springs, Estero, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, then you're going to want to subscribe to our channel and click the little bell so that you are the first to be notified whenever we post a new video, and you'll be the first to know about market updates in our area.